It has now been 8 years after Meet Your Match, the most catastrophic update in Team Fortress 2's entire history, was released. Meet Your Match was a patch that was anticipated to bring official competitive matchmaking into the game. And this it did. Ironically, despite this being the entire point of the update, the competitive matchmaking system is completely irrelevant, inconsequential, and pointless when talking about the historical implications of this update. Competitive matchmaking was, simply put, a novelty with which the entire player base was done with in a matter of weeks. Because, to put it frankly, it was a simply inferior, less fun, and more broken version of the game, and most TF2 players have less than zero interest in playing the game competitively to begin with. The single most important implementation that came with Meet Your Match is the casual matchmaking system. Casual matchmaking was a bolt out of the blue. Like, this decision that came out of nowhere with no warning. And no warning would have been enough for the implementation of a system so incomprehensibly broken and to be forced on the player base as the default main way to play the game. Before Meet Your Match, before casual matchmaking, Team Fortress 2 was a different game. Before casual matchmaking, we had Quickplay. And it is impossible to overstate just how much damage this one change, how much damage it has done to the game. I've called Meet Your Match the 9/11 of TF2. And although this may seem like a bit of an exaggeration, I'm actually not joking here. If we're talking about the consequences of this update, all the issues that it's brought the default game, and combining the amount of older players who quit because of this update and the amount of potential new regulars that quit in a matter of hours because of the infinite problems casual matchmaking has brought the game, we've lost tens of thousands of players. And in their stead, we have gained tens of thousands of bots. And that is the legacy of Meet Your Match. An unprecedented, irreversible decline and stagnation that was forced upon this game for no good reason. Before going into the specific differences that separate Quickplay and casual matchmaking, it's important to ask the question of why Quickplay was replaced in the first place. Was Quickplay a broken, non-functioning system? And the answer to that is a straight and simple no. Quickplay worked, and it worked for years. And anyone that tells you otherwise is free to provide evidence of how Quickplay ever managed to fail half as badly as matchmaking has. Did Quickplay ever have a problem with thousands of bots flooding the official Valve servers to the point of unplayability for several years straight? No. In fact, there is no case of this happening for a single day or a single hour in the Quickplay era. The concept of this happening at all would have been incomprehensible to a TF2 player in 2013. Like, he wouldn't understand it if you tried explaining the shit to him. Such a massive failure was not possible in the old system. Plain and simple. Quickplay could not even dream of coming close to the sheer broken unfunctionality of casual matchmaking. Okay, so you have a system that works well for years. In what possible universe do you take that working system, you take it and you dump it into the trash, scrap it completely, and replace it with a new, untested system that changes absolutely everything? What could possibly compel you to do this? The answer to that question is arrogance, hubris, and a total disregard for the game's history and its health. Meet Your Match is the most disrespectful update this game has ever received. It is anti-TF2 at its core, and it's that way completely by design. Of course, from the beginning, It was an update focused on adding an official competitive element to the game. No one would have had any issue with that. No one would have had any issue with Valve adding in a new competitive matchmaking system that is separate from the vanilla game. No one would have cared. Like in a month, it would have been completely forgotten. But this is the problem with Meet Your Match. It is an update defined not by what it added, but by what it removed. It is an update that was not satisfied with building something new because it was here to destroy something that we already have. Competitive matchmaking could have very easily coexisted with the old Quickplay system, but WoW was not here to bring us coexistence. They were here to bring us revolution. They were here to wipe the slate clean and bring us into a new era. 2016 was supposed to be the year zero. The new school of TF2 devs were not interested in improving the game as it is because they didn't have any respect or even any understanding of what TF2 is. They were interested in turning TF2 into something that it isn't. Valve got it into its head that all ways of old are now null and void, and TF2 needs to enter a new era of multiplayer gaming. And in this era, competitive gaming is the future, and fun is not acceptable. If TF2 doesn't adapt to this change, it will die. So this is a necessity. We have to do this. And in a twist of tragicomic irony, this forced attempt at chasing trends is exactly what killed TF2. And if they had the clarity to not force this ridiculous and unfeasible transformation of turning TF2 into the opposite of what it actually is, this game would have thrived without issue throughout all of these years. And timing is very important when looking at Meet Your Match. The update was released in July of 2016, a few months after the release of Overwatch. And Overwatch had already been in beta since late 2015. And there can be no mistake here. Overwatch was the single most anticipated multiplayer game, not just of 2016, but possibly of the entire decade. Everybody knew that Overwatch was coming, and it was being branded as a TF2 killer from the very beginning. And I remember the feeling of simultaneous dread and excitement in its wake. In Valve's eyes, Overwatch loomed over the horizon like an incoming meteor, and something had to be done about it. And from their point of view, the best way to prevent Overwatch from overshadowing and burying TF2 was to copy it. And this is where the entire update's essence is. Meet Your Match was a rushed, misguided, and completely baffling reaction to Overwatch. And when you look at it from this perspective, it's genuinely hilarious that this is what completely destroyed the game for almost a decade by now. Overwatch, the apparent TF2 killer, actually did kill TF2. Not by being some sort of incredible revolutionary game that turns TF2 obsolete. No, Overwatch killed TF2 by being such an utterly dogshit game that when Valve attempted to copy it, TF2 instantly collapsed. It's like a scene from a classical Greek tragedy. The oracles proclaimed that Overwatch would kill TF2, and Valve, upon hearing the prophecy, attempts to prevent it from coming true. And they try to modernize TF2 and rip off its so-called competitor so that, it could compete with Overwatch. And this is exactly how the prophecy is fulfilled and how the game is fucking killed. A poetic end that is as tragic as it is comical. We have been suffering the consequences of the shitty patch for 8 years now, and the entire thing was started because Valve got it into their little heads that TF2 and Overwatch were going to be bitter competitors. Valve killed TF2 because of a shitty, overhyped trash can of a game that doesn't even exist anymore. So I'm telling you that Valve was copying Overwatch in Meet Your Match. And of course, before anything, On a game design philosophy level, the attempt at competitivization was obviously spurred by Overwatch. That, like, unless you seriously believe in endless coincidences, like, this was a reaction to Overwatch. It was like I don't think that can be denied. The timing of Meet Your Match is the single most important piece of evidence. But when I say that they copied Overwatch, I really do mean like they straight up copied it. See, Overwatch had competitive matchmaking and an unranked matchmaking system. The differences between these two choices were actually minimal. And even though supposedly unranked is supposed to be a more casual experience, it is still following almost the exact same rule set as competitive. It still has hidden MMR, right, and ELO based balancing. It was virtually the exact same experience as the ranked ladder, except it was a little more loose when it came to penalizing you for leaving the game in the middle of a match. Now, this is a serious mindfuck, okay? You know how they named the unranked matchmaking system in Overwatch? Quickplay. I shit you fucking not. Quick play. Okay, so let me just try to comprehend this for a second. Okay, Overwatch copied the name for their casual matchmaking system from TF2 by calling it Quick Play, and TF2 then went on and copied the casual matchmaking system that Overwatch made, and they replaced the old Quick Play system of TF2 that gave its name to Overwatch's unranked matchmaking with TF2 casual matchmaking, which was very blatantly ripped off from Blizzard. And then they destroyed Quickplay and TF2 with casual matchmaking, which in Overwatch was called fucking Quickplay. Okay, this shit is too fucked up for me. But that's how it happened. Like that. This is like this shit is real. Like I'm not making this up. Like in a nutshell, Blizzard copied the name, and Valve copied the actual system, and they both copied each other. And when I mean copied, again, I really do mean literally copied. Overwatch had mandatory matchmaking for both the casual and competitive version of their game. So the completely genius idea came into Valve's head that the same exact thing has to happen in TF2. Because again, in their eyes, TF2 has to be a viable competitor to Overwatch. And for it to be a viable competitor, it needs to have the same system. That's how they thought about it. It is impossible to overstate the genuine mental retardation needed to think that this is a viable strategy. But, I guess the Overwatch-induced mass hysteria at Valve made it seem like the way to go. This entire thing seems completely baffling from today's perspective, especially because with the gift of hindsight, we all know what a dumpster fire Overwatch ended up becoming. But, hey, it happened how it happened. See, casual matchmaking is already an inferior system compared to quick play before we even get into the server, right? In the quick play era, we already had a matchmaking system. You select the game mode, and the game finds you a server. And this all happened in a matter of seconds. You never had to sit there waiting for minutes to find a game. It was very fucking fast. Quick play was quick, So already, casual matchmaking is a complete downgrade on the matchmaking aspect itself. But the single most important part of Quickplay's matchmaking system was that it was completely optional. You were not forced to ever sit in a queue, and as short as the queue was back then, you could completely avoid it by having the option to select an official Valve server on a map of your choosing, and you had the option to join it completely manually. If I wanted to play a specific single map in the quick play era, I simply went in, found a server playing this map, and joined it. And all of this was done in a matter of seconds. And today, if you want to do the exact same thing, you want to play a specific map, let's say, for example, Foundry. You select that map, And then you have to wait in queue for an unspecified and inconsistent amount of time. But very likely, if you're queuing just for a single map that is niche, that isn't like 2 Fort, you're going to have to wait for at least more than 5 minutes. You know? Like, that is completely absurd. For what purpose? Why would you remove the ability from the player himself to find a game on a map that he wants to play? Why is your shitty, broken matchmaking system forced on the player? Why did the Quickplay matchmaking, which was already 100 times faster than casual, give the player an option to join servers manually? In the Quickplay era, I could find a fucking RD asteroid server at 5 a.m. with 20 players, and I could just instantly manually join it after finding it myself. Like, this is all done in seconds. Why and how did your new so-called modern matchmaking, this new modern matchmaking system, how did it make it harder for your players to actually get into a server? How did we go backwards instead of forwards? Why did so-called ad hoc manual connections that players joining Valve servers were using to connect the games since the game's launch, why did that have to be removed? Again, the only explanation that makes any sense is that they were copying Overwatch. Overwatch does not give its players the option to join official servers manually. So why should TF2? Well, for starters, Overwatch is Overwatch, and TF2 is fucking TF2. What works for one game won't automatically work for the other. Why does matchmaking work in Overwatch and not in TF2? Well, actually, it doesn't. It doesn't work, and Overwatch is a shitty, terrible game. But, that's a different video. Why does mandatory matchmaking at least make sense in Overwatch and not in TF2? Well, Overwatch is a competitive game with small team limits capped at 6v6, and Team Fortress 2 is a casual game based around 12v12. Overwatch's casual matchmaking is basically unranked competitive, with the same general rule set being applied. And, in Overwatch, casual is playing second fiddle to competitive, which is the main, most important part of the game. In vanilla Team Fortress 2, the actual game, the game that 99% of the player base is playing, the game that has been relegated into casual matchmaking since Meet Your Match, has absolutely nothing to do with competitive TF2. It follows a completely different rule set and is the single most important part of the game, while competitive is a mere novelty that has historically had no importance in Team Fortress 2. Like, you have the opposite situation here. But see, this is the problem. Meet Your Match was completely ignoring the part that I just mentioned. Meet Your Match was built on a false foundation. It was built on an idea that never existed in reality. It was, perhaps, an attempt to will that idea into reality. But from the perspective of the TF2 dev team in 2016, competitive was supposed to become the single most important part of Team Fortress 2, and casual was going to be of lesser importance and was essentially supposed to become quasi-competitive. That was supposed to happen. It didn't happen. It never will happen. And there is no universe in which it could fucking happen. And the reason why casual matchmaking is a burning pile of steaming shit is because Valve, against all logic and against TF2's entire identity, against its entire history, tried to turn the game into the opposite of what it is and what it always was. TF2's entire history was to become irrelevant and unimportant because Valve believed that a shiny new trend could simply replace all of it. Valve really believed that there would have been no problems from destroying systems and removing features that have been a core of Team Fortress 2 for almost a decade. Parts of the game that worked well since release were deleted or compromised because a game that was out for less than a year was succeeding with a completely different gameplay philosophy. And casual matchmaking was built on the premise that competitive matchmaking and competitive TF2 in general was going to really take off and become the most played part of the game. And casual was just going to be a mode of secondary importance. And it also needed to become more competitivized and ideally similar to competitive play in practice. And that brings us back to why you can't join servers manually anymore. You can't join them because that messes up the matchmaking. Casual matchmaking was supposed to become a system that tries to balance teams by skill level before the game even begins. Because again, that's what happens in Overwatch. Even when you're playing the unranked mode, the game still uses a hidden elo system to balance teams according to a supposed metric of player skill. Now, first of all, let me just say skill based matchmaking has failed every single time it has been tried, and there is not a single fun game that uses it. Okay? But in TF2, skill based matchmaking is an absurdity beyond explanation. It is completely at odds with the philosophy, identity, and the history of this game. This is a game in which people are not obligated to sweat their ass off every single game. This is a game in which people are given options in how they approach the game. And there isn't some set meta that players are forced at gunpoint into following. This is a game in which people run around the map hitting people with fish. This is a game where people jump around with rocket jumpers trying to land on people's heads. Okay? This is a game in which people have the freedom to play not in the most efficient way, but the way that is the most fun to them at that moment. And this Team Fortress 2 is this way, not by accident, but by deliberate and intentional design choice by the original development team of Team Fortress 2. And it's this design choice that made this game the most fun that you can have online. And really, it's the reason why the game is still kicking right now. Okay? And what skill based matchmaking does is it throws that entire philosophy into the trash. And it forces you to sweat your ass off every single game and turns an experience that is supposed to be fun and laid back into a fucking day job. And let me say, I have no problem with tryharding, and it's always been a very fun part of the game for me. But it's very different when you try hard because you choose to compared to when the game forces you, you know? The point is, casual matchmaking was built on a foundation that skill based matchmaking is going to balance the teams perfectly, and you will have an epically competitive game, even when you're playing casual, bro. This bullshit is the root cause of most of the system's problems. You can actually find your hidden casual elo in your personal game data. Now, the problem is that I'm not sure if casual actually uses the elo to balance teams. I mean, logically, everything points to it. What's the point of keeping track of your supposed skill level if you're not going to be using it for balancing, right? If you're not going to be using it for anything, why do you even track it? But your average casual game is such an unbalanced shitfest that it's kind of hard to believe. Almost every game is a stomp. But I guess then again, that's what happens in all of these shit competitive games that use skill-based matchmaking. So, who the fuck knows? Whether it's in use or not is unimportant. What's important is that casual matchmaking is built on the premise that it will be used. And that influenced everything else in the system. And this was actually even more apparent on day one of Meet Your Match. On the very first day of the patch, when casual matchmaking had just come out, you were actually penalized in casual for leaving the game early. Again, this is fucking incomprehensible. But they really thought they could get away with this. They thought they could get away with punishing players for leaving casual games of TF2. Why did they think they could do that? Well, because Overwatch does it. And again, trying to apply Overwatch philosophies to TF2 is insanity. It's like gold trying to copy shit. They removed the lever penalty in a day because the backlash was immense. If only they did us all a favor and removed casual matchmaking entirely in that day. See, even if they removed the penalty for leaving, the fact that they added it in the first place means that from the beginning, it was assumed, it was supposed to be an integral part of the new matchmaking system. And that fact means that even if it was removed, it still had consequences for the system as a whole. And all of these issues of casual matchmaking, they're not singular and separate. They are very much all connected and come from the same root of trying to competitivize this game, even in casual matchmaking, right? Here's an example. Manual connections to Valve servers were removed. Why? Well, because casual is going to use skill-based matchmaking to balance the games perfectly, and players joining manually, well, that is going to mess up the perfect elo-based balancing that casual is supposed to have. Casual penalized you for leaving. Why? Because if you leave the server early, you're ruining this very serious game of casual Team Fortress 2 because the matchmaking system has to find not just another player, but a player with a similar elo to yours, to keep the game balanced. And the same thing can be said about auto balance. Meet Your Match actually straight up removed auto balance from casual completely. Again, it took them months to add it back in. And again, why did they remove auto balance? Because the casual matchmaking system was supposed to be a perfectly balanced system based on elo, MMR, and having to auto balance players from one team to the other. That should never be necessary in the first place. Casual was built on the premise that casual would have no flaws. It removed the failsafe that was auto balance because it was assumed that fail-safes would no longer be necessary with this incredible new matchmaking system that was rushed out in less than a year without actually being tested. Skill-based matchmaking was supposed to mean that no one will leave the server early in the first place because, the matches are going to be so balanced that everyone is going to be glued to their computer screen, sweating their ass off in this fucking epic casual TF2 match. And if they did have the insolence to leave, well, they were supposed to be punished. Now, of course, eventually, after a few months, they did actually come to terms with the fact that auto balance is a necessary part of the game, and they added it back in. But as everyone who plays the game knows, auto balance is broken in Valve server TF2 right now. And it's completely dormant half of the time. Why is auto balance broken? Because it wasn't supposed to be a part of the new system in the first place. At this point, let me just read an excerpt from the Overwatch wiki to prove my point. If a player quits at the beginning of the match, the matchmaking system will look for another player to backfill. If a player quit involuntarily by disconnection from their side or from the server, they will be given 2 minutes to reconnect and rejoin the match. And if the player quit voluntarily by clicking the quit button, they cannot rejoin the match. This concept was essentially taken word for word, the exact same principle. It was straight up blatantly ripped off from Overwatch and thrown into casual matchmaking. And if you're ever wondering why you're playing a casual game that's 12v9 with free phantom players on your team that aren't even in the server, taking up your team's player slots while you're getting completely stomped, and you're wondering why the auto balance system is only kicking in when the game is 10 seconds away from ending, this is why. They completely destroyed auto balance, which has been in the game since the Big Bang, because they were trying to apply balancing principles from a completely different game to TF2. They ruined the system that worked in TF2 since the beginning, and the consequences of that are constant, unbalanced, shitfest stomp games in which you're constantly down 2 players or more, thanks to a team of clueless interns and contractors with no understanding of what TF2 is, trying to apply ideas taken from a fucking competitive MOBA shooter into a casual 12v12 arena shooter from 2007. And they didn't once stop and think to themselves, wow, this is really fucking stupid. On to a different but related issue. In the old days, official servers were run by a time limit system of 45 minutes per map. With casual matchmaking, this time limit was replaced by a round limit. The explanation to why this was done is the exact same as it was for every issue previously mentioned. Casual matchmaking was supposed to become quasi-competitive and straight up ripped off concepts from Overwatch. The round limit is no exception. Once again, everything goes back to the same root and every issue is connected. Matchmaking is supposed to give you a balanced, close, and competitive game, right? There's no need for a time limit when you'll have at least 2 rounds that are close and action-packed. And since people were supposed to not leave matches early because the idea was to penalize them for doing so, people would be more willing to agree to play 2 or 3 rounds rather than a flat 45-minute game. And of course, no auto balance and no team switching, which was also removed, meant that you were supposed to be committed to the team that you join from the beginning to the end, because that way the balance will stay perfect for the whole match. I'm sure that's how they drew it up in theory. In practice, though, we know that this is complete and total bullshit. And anyone who's played this game in the past 8 years knows that the round limit serves no other purpose but to interrupt and frustrate the player's experience. Some game modes are affected by the round limit less, and some are affected by it more. The most playable game mode in matchmaking, due to the round limit, is Payload, especially on free stage maps like Gold Rush and Thunder Mountain. But every single other game mode has been severely negatively affected by the round limit. The most extreme cases are with 5CP and Capture the Flag. Games in these game modes regularly end in less than 5 minutes of gameplay. Imagine sitting in queue for 5 minutes, getting into a game that's already half over, and after playing for less than 2 minutes, the game ends, you're interrupted with a stupid map vote, the same map that you were just playing gets voted for, but the server for some stupid reason has to restart, so you're interrupted by a loading screen and, a pre-round timer after that. And due to the fact that the game was interrupted, half of the server left. And now, after you waiting for 3 minutes, when the server restarted in the pre-round timer, you're now stuck playing a 5v5 game that once again ends in less than 5 minutes, and the entire cycle repeats again after that. I don't have to imagine, because that's what's been happening consistently for the past 8 fucking years, half the time that I just want to play some control points or capture the flag. And again, back in the Quickplay era, when you wanted to play a specific game mode or a specific map, like, say, Granary, you can find a Valve server playing that map in a matter of seconds. You do not have to waste your time sitting in an inefficient queue because you can join that map manually. And when you join that server, you're essentially guaranteed 30 minutes of game time on that one map. And that's what players want. If I choose to play on that map, it means that I want to fucking play it. And I don't want you to interrupt my gameplay on the map and kill the server for no other reason other than some team won 2 rounds. This point cannot be overstated. It is ridiculous to think about the amount of hours of gameplay that casual matchmaking is straight up robbed from all of us. Millions of hours for players who could have and would have been playing the game and having fun playing Team Fortress 2, wasted on queues, pre-round timers, loading screens, and games that end in less than 5 fucking minutes before the cycle is repeated. This system has introduced so much pointless downtime into TF2 for absolutely zero conceivable reason whatsoever. It is impossible to explain how much more enjoyable this game was. When you could play a single session of TF2 on a single map without constantly being interrupted, you could play for 40 minutes consistently. You know, Quickplay allowed you to simply play the game. It respected your time as a player by letting you actually play on the maps that you wanted to play on for a good amount of time before maps were switched. It respected your agency as a player by giving you the freedom to find an official server that you like without forcing you into a queue that lasts minutes. You know? And this was buried and destroyed for casual matchmaking, which makes half of the time that you spend in TF2 downtime, in which you're not even really playing the game at all. The round limit doesn't just interrupt you, frustrate you, and waste your time. It also incentivizes you to always be sweating in pubs. And this is likely intended. And it all comes down to, again, the same root of the game being forced into a competitivization. Because the game ends in 2 rounds won, it means that people are forced to give those 2 rounds some sort of inflated value, like they mean anything. You have to be sweating your ass off in those 2 rounds because you were forced to sit in a queue, a pre-round timer, and you likely had to search for a good while, before you actually got into a decent game from the beginning. So when you finally do get into a good server that's full, and you get to play from the start, and you get to finally play the game, after all this waiting and searching, you're still going to get less than 20 minutes of gameplay, probably, So you want to win because look, if you lose those 2 rounds, that means you lose the entire epic casual game. This is very important to you, right? And after all that waiting before you got a good game, and after even more waiting before you'll find another one, well, you don't want to feel like a fucking loser punk. So, you got to try hard now that you got the chance, But who gives a shit? Honestly, who cares? And again, this is completely artificial and nonsensical. And it comes from the same misguided bullshit premise of trying to turn TF2 into something that it isn't. 2 rounds of TF2 don't mean anything. That's barely enough time to get warmed up. And we all know that casual matchmaking does not actually give us close, competitive, action-packed games. 80% of the time, it gives us one-sided, shitty stomps. And paradoxically, despite what I just said, these days, especially in game modes like CTF and 5CP, I catch myself having to hold back because even though I could cap the point and end the game in a matter of minutes, I have to basically stop playing because I want to play the game mode that I queued for more than 2 minutes. I want to play on the map for more than 2 minutes before having to kill the server by interrupting the game for a map change after I quote unquote won the casual match. I don't give a shit about winning 2 rounds and winning this epic game of casual TF2. It does not do anything for me. I'm here to play the game, not to chase elo points. And in the quick play era, I got to play the game. And you'd have plenty of games where teams quickly stomp and win 2 rounds in a row. You know what happened in those days? The server was not interrupted. The map did not have to change. You were not put into a loading screen because you barely even got to play the game at that point. That's fucking ridiculous. What happened in the old system is that after a team won 2 rounds straight, is that teams were automatically scrambled and the game keeps going without being interrupted, and you get to keep playing on the map because a team wasn't considered a winner for winning 2 rounds, you know? And what do you know? When the teams got scrambled, you could instantly adjust the balance of the game without having to kill the server by restarting it, you know? And of course, scrambling was removed from the game with Meet Your Match after matchmaking was forced on us all. You know, not only was there an auto scramble in the Quickplay era in the old days, you could also vote to scramble the teams in the middle of a round when it was obvious that a team was getting stumped. And hey, what do you know? The games would become more balanced without the server being forced into a restart or a different map or you having to find a different server. You could just rebalance the game in the middle of a fucking match, you know? But of course, that had to be removed. Of course, Scramble had to be removed. The existence of Scramble is at odds with the very foundation of casual matchmaking. This system believes that it will be able to match you into perfectly balanced games in which you are assigned and fully committed to a specific team before you even join the server. What's the point of scrambling the game when skill-based matchmaking will make every single game that you play fair and perfectly balanced? I don't know. I don't know if I should laugh or cry. Hey, you could change teams in the old days. Why did casual remove that? Oh, right. Because that would interrupt, once again, the flawless supposed balancing that was supposed to come from matchmaking. Back in the day when you were destroying a team, you could simply go out there, switch teams, assuming they had one less player, and after switching, you could try and help them out. And that was a fun thing to do. You know, you could challenge yourself and you could try to make the game more fair at the same time. And of course, they had to remove this. You could spectate in the old days. You can't spectate any longer because, of course, you're playing a very serious competitive game, even when you're playing casual matchmaking. You spectating is going to ruin the competition. It's going to ruin everything. It's going to destroy the balance. You can't spectate. You have to be playing, and you have to be sweating your ass off at all times because this is what the game is supposed to become. You know, it's absurd to think about. After listing all of these problems and all of these features that were removed, and all this bullshit that ruins games, replacing it. And it all comes down to the same exact root cause of an attempted competitivization of TF2. They really thought this was going to work. You know, what were they thinking? Were they thinking at all? Is my question. Was there not a single person left at WoW that even understood what TF2 is? That no one for a second understand just how absurd of a transformation this update was trying to achieve. So I went through what casual matchmaking has removed from this game. And now let me tell you of the one thing that it added. The party system. In the Quickplay era, if you're not familiar, if you wanted to join a server with your buddies, all you had to do was join the same server. And since manual connections were allowed into official Valve servers, this was a very simple process. One friend joins the server, and the others simply go into the friend tab on Steam, click view server info, and connect to the same server through there. And in a matter of seconds, with a few buttons pressed, you were connected to the same match. Simple and efficient. And of course, because it's simple and because it works without any issue, matchmaking had to ruin this entire process. And of course, you can't do this anymore because ad hoc connections are not allowed. And of course, you can't just simply join your friends when they're on a Valve server. You can't do that anymore. Instead, you're forced to use this brilliant, modernized, streamlined party system, which forces you to wait in a queue for 5 minutes. When pre-matchmaking, you could complete the entire process in 5 seconds. But this objective downgrade is actually the least important part of the party system. What the party system is responsible for, its biggest contribution to Team Fortress 2, in conjunction with the completely automated nature of casual matchmaking as a whole, is, of course, the bot crisis. And there can be no mistake here. There has never been a recorded case of bots flooding Valve servers before Meet Your Match. There is no recorded case of this happening because it was simply impossible in the Quickplay era. Catbots, the first iteration and the first massive cheater bot wave in TF2's history, began in the summer of 2017, exactly 1 year after casual matchmaking was released. And after that first wave of bots, with some minor breaks in between, we have had 7 years of consistent flooding of bots in Valve servers to the point of complete unplayability. And all the things that casual removed from TF2, all the great features and the simple and brilliant quick play system that has served this game well for years, to compensate for all of this, for all of that which they have destroyed, Valve granted us a gift with this new thing, this new contribution that they gave us, that came from this brilliant, streamlined, and fully automated system that doesn't let human beings join servers manually, but allows 6 bots in a single party to flood the same server at the same time. Oh, and of course, why does the party system cap at 6 players? Because casual matchmaking was an afterthought. It was something that you were supposed to be playing in the downtime before you and your party of 6 was going to kick ass in a new epic official competitive matchmaking. Because competitive, well, that's the future of TF2. And after 8 years, we all know just how true that is, right? And now let me tell you of the supposed flaws of Quickplay. More accurately, the one single flaw that was actually real. Quickplay was a system that combined official Valve servers with community servers. It was a system that allowed community servers running the accepted vanilla TF2 rule set to be part of the same collective pool of Quickplay servers. And together with Valve's official servers, community servers were part of the same collective, right? Some servers would basically bypass the vanilla rule set that they were supposed to follow, right? And add in things that weren't supposed to be allowed, like MOTD ads and fake players. Of course, this was an actual flaw of the quick play system. Of course, that it was a flaw. And this was the one only singular flaw that the system had. And guess what? When you got connected to one of these shit servers, all you had to do was blacklist them and move on. And there are some clowns out there spreading this disinformation, telling you that this was a serious issue that is comparable to the shit that we had to deal with post 2016. When the reality is that you could completely bypass this issue with the press of one button that makes quick play search for Valve servers only. You could also do this manually in the server browser by simply typing in Valve in the server tags to have Valve servers pop up and simply join a Valve server of your choosing without any matchmaking whatsoever. And this is, according to some utter imbecile, an issue comparable to the complete dysfunctionality of casual matchmaking. The one issue that Quickplay had, you could completely bypass by clicking one button and checking one box. If only there was a single button we could have pressed in the past 7 years that allowed us to get rid of all the bots flooding our fucking servers. If only Quickplay was a better system. This is not some sort of subjective opinion. It's not, oh, well, you could prefer one system to the other. No, this is an objective, undeniable fact, like the sun rising in the east. Every single metric that you could compare, every single way you compare these systems, Quickplay is better in every single way. It was better than casual matchmaking, and that is not something that can be debated. That is not something that can be questioned. That is just a fucking fact, okay? And let me tell you something. Quickplay was better for Valve servers, and it was better for community servers as well. And I think that aspect of Quickplay, the vision behind it, the main principle behind it. I think it was absolutely beautiful. That attempted unity between official Valve servers and community servers to provide us with many options of the vanilla TF2 experience, both part of the same collective whole and easily accessible to everyone. It was a worthy goal. And for the most part, it worked perfectly. And no, this is not just nostalgia. Over half of my TF2 playtime was spent in the quick play era. In those 4 years, from 2012 to 2016, I have spent more time playing this game than in the past 8 years. And of course, there are several factors for this, but the single most important one is that this game was infinitely more fun to play in the quick play era. And I would not get nearly as frustrated with this game back in those days, due to the gameplay experience of TF2 being superior in every single possible way. I found my favorite community servers with Quickplay, and I got to play on Valve servers when they were at their best. And of course, those community servers died. Community servers in general just went to shit after 2016. This is very much a consequence of Quickplay being destroyed. And of course, at the same time, official Valve servers have suffered in every single aspect and have been barely playable in the past 7 years. Quickplay was a system that worked for the most part and gave you minor inconveniences that were easily bypassable at its worst. Matchmaking is a system that is terrible and ruins the entire game, even when the servers aren't being flooded with bots. Even when the matchmaking system is working as intended, it's complete trash. And guess what? For the past 7 years, it hasn't been working. It hasn't been working at all, right? And you can't really understand, just how terrible, just how trash the change from quick play to matchmaking is if you haven't played with the old rule set. And let me tell you, recently we got a vanilla TF2 server playing with that old rule set, castaway.tf. We got that server populated. And for about 6 hours straight, we played on that server with the pre-matchmaking rule set, with that 45-minute time limit, with a wide variety of maps and game modes. And those 6 hours were the most fun I've had with TF2 in the past 8 years. When all of the bullshit of matchmaking is thrown away and you get to play TF2 the way it was meant to be played, it is still, without a shadow of a fucking doubt, the most fun game ever made. And a year ago, some kid asked me, if Quickplay was such a great system, why didn't I talk about its greatness before matchmaking came out? That's like asking someone who's been stranded in the fucking Sahara Desert for the past year why they didn't praise the brilliance of drinking water before they lost access to it. I mean, yeah, it's true. We didn't really know how good we had it with Quickplay. We didn't really appreciate the system when we had access to it because we weren't aware of how bad TF2 could get when it was gone, And that's the sign of a healthy system. A system that people barely even acknowledged. Something people that didn't even think about. Because if you're not forced to think about a system, it's probably because it just works without you even having to worry about anything. That's what Quickplay was, right? And there might be some players out there who got into TF2 post Meet Your Match who are going to tell me that matchmaking actually isn't that bad because, they installed the game post 2016 and they think it's really fun. They think it's a great game the way it is today. And to those of you, let me say, absolutely, yes, TF2 is still a brilliant game. But you can't even comprehend how much better of a game it was in the quick play era if you haven't actually experienced it. If you like this game today, you would have liked it 100 times more 10 years ago. And TF2 is still alive today, not because of matchmaking, but in spite of matchmaking. And let me just say, I don't actually pity the players who never got to experience this game before matchmaking. I don't pity you. I envy you because you can't genuinely understand just how far this game has fallen in the past 8 years. You can only imagine what an incomparable gaming experience TF2 was in its golden age. And you're lucky because you don't know what we've lost. And if you ever feel like you're playing the game with a terrible, rushed, half-baked, and broken system that doesn't even fit the game, just know that you're right. And TF2 is not supposed to be like this. TF2 was not like this. And TF2 should not be the way it is with casual matchmaking. And the image of the old TF2, the TF2 that we lost, is still vivid and alive in my head. And I will never forget what this game used to be. And I will never stop cursing the day when Meet Your Match went live and robbed us of what TF2 could have been all of these years. A TF2 without bots, a TF2 without round limits, a TF2 where free-to-play players can call for medic, a TF2 that never forgot its identity and never abandoned its roots. Here's a depressing fact for you. As of now, the casual matchmaking era of TF2 has lasted twice as long as the Quickplay era. We only had 4 years of Quickplay before it was unceremoniously killed off in the July of 2016. And we can only imagine how different this game would be if Quickplay was allowed to continue growing and to keep improving. If Valve stuck to it. But instead, we got matchmaking. We have an entire generation of players who don't even know of a TF2 without bots. And right now, after 7 years, Valve has finally managed to do the bare minimum. And thousands of players are completely unaware of the simple fact that Valve took all this time to fix an issue that they created in the first place by launching this rushed, broken joke of a matchmaking system and forcing it on us, forcing it on the game when we could have continued playing with a system that worked without any of these issues for years. And people right now are praising Valve for doing something that wouldn't have been needed. It wouldn't have been necessary if they hadn't scrapped the system that we had before matchmaking. Most players are simply going to dismiss the serious, systematic issues of casual matchmaking, issues that ruin, frustrate, and interrupt the gameplay experience. Because to them, this is all they know. This barely functioning joke of a system is a godsend to them right now because, hey, they get to play TF2 without bots right now. They don't understand that this shouldn't have happened in the first place. They don't know of a different system. And TF2 has been destroyed by matchmaking for so long that we've accepted this absurdity as a simple part of the game. And this is the point of this video. I think it's disturbing and sad that most of the people playing this game today don't even know about the damage that was done to this game by matchmaking. They just accept the current system. They just take it for granted. It's something that just is TF2 to them. And they don't know that this isn't TF2. This is not what TF2 really is. It shouldn't be this way. This ill-fitting, rushed, half-baked, and completely broken system was forced on this game. It does not belong in this game. It does not fit TF2 because it wasn't made to fit TF2. And there was a time when we had a system that actually fit this game. We had a system that worked. We had a system that allowed us to enjoy this game to its fullest. And that system was Quickplay. And that system should never be forgotten because Quickplay is not just a system, it is an era. It is a golden age that was taken from us too soon. And TF2 could resume that golden age if that old system, Quickplay, was resurrected. And there is no point of discussion more important. There is no message that needs to ring out louder in this community than the reintroduction of Quickplay. Every other topic pales in significance. So much breath is wasted on discussing superfluous topics of petty importance, and talking about Quickplay is somehow a niche underground concept. And it should be the opposite. There is nothing that would bring TF2 more long-term gain than Quickplay being reinstated and casual matchmaking being thrown out the window. I wanted to remind to those who've experienced it, and I wanted to paint a portrait to those who never have of what Team Fortress 2 used to be, of what it should be, and what it still could be. And let me just say, I do think it's brilliant news that WoW finally banned the bots. And, seemingly for good this time. This does seem different. Because I've been through the stages of grief with this game so many times by now that I can't believe that I'm actually feeling something resembling optimism, for TF2 after 8 years of nothing but failure after failure. And let me just say, Valve has a tremendous privilege. They do. Because even though they've destroyed this game with Meet Your Match 8 years ago, even though they have ruined this game, and they have made it infinitely worse compared to what it used to be, this game is still alive. Most games would not have lasted a single year with the fall from grace that TF2 has had to deal with. And TF2 still lives after 8 years of this crap. This game that went through 9 years in development and 7 years of bots, this game is still standing. And Valve is still lucky enough to be in a position to where they can rectify their one tremendous mistake. And all it takes is one simple reversion, a return to a system that worked and the scrapping of a system that didn't work. And all it takes is one decision. And the nightmare that TF2 has been forced into ends, and the dream of what TF2 was and what TF2 should be can continue. Could Valve fix all the issues of casual matchmaking and make it a good system? Theoretically they could, right? Theoretically. And considering that it took them 7 years to just get to a point where we can play on the official Valve servers, I doubt this system can be fixed because that's going to take a lot of work. And every single possible improvement, the casual matchmaking that you could do, every single improvement, if you want to improve the casual matchmaking system, you're just going to make it closer to Quickplay. You're going to follow the Quickplay model. And at that point, there is no point in trying to reform this system because casual matchmaking is rotten at its very core. It was rotten since the beginning, and it was rotten because of the false foundation on which it was built on. That foundation that was working fully against the very soul of this game. And instead of trying to salvage this broken, rotten, failed system, the best thing they could do is scrap it completely and return us to a system that was actually built to accommodate the needs of this game. Because Quickplay only needed minor changes and minor maintenance to be a perfectly functioning system. And matchmaking needed 7 years to get to a point without getting spin bots taking up half the player slots. I am not asking for Valve to treat TF2 as their single most important priority. I am not asking them to give this game all of the resources and all of the attention that they have. I am not asking Valve for a sequel to TF2. I am not asking Valve to bring us 5 updates a year and 100 new weapons and maps. I am not asking for new hats, new skins, or new crates, because none of those things have any importance. I am asking Valve to understand that TF2 still has a future, and its future is in its past. And I am asking for you to relight that flame that was snuffed out in 2016. I am asking you to remember what this game used to be. I am asking you to bring us back Team Fortress 2. And that is why I am asking you to bring back Quickplay. But it's been 8 years. The return of Quickplay at this point is a pipe dream. and relying on Valve to correct course becomes more and more unrealistic as time passes. But there is something we can do. Even if we can't force Valve to bring back Quickplay, we could at least bypass the cancer of matchmaking if we all migrated to vanilla TF2 servers running the pre-meet your match rule set. Servers like Castaway.tf that respect TF2's old vision need to be consistently populated. And then at least we have an alternative that allows us to play this game the way it was intended to be played and the way we played it for years in a better time. So know that the old spirit of TF2 is not yet dead, and its fate is in our hands right now, which is why I hope to see you all playing on Castaway, all of you. If we play on these servers regularly and consistently fill them up, we are keeping that old spirit alive. But if you ignore what I just said and you sit there and you pay lip service without actually taking action, and these servers wither away without players, just know you have no fucking right to complain. Vanilla servers are our best bet, and their future depends on how many of you take that bet. Still, I want to believe that one day Quickplay will be officially reinstated. Just imagine turning on TF2 one day and being greeted by that old hand-drawn game mode art. Imagine.